Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, everybody. Good to have you with us here on this Christmas Eve edition of Gulfstream Today. It's Jason Blue and Acacia Courtney, and we're happy to have you. Gulfstream Park indeed open for business today with 10 races.
Yes, we are. Are you dressing up as Santa Claus?
No, I don't do those things. I'm
no,
not fun like that.
That's probably a better move. But yes, before Santa Claus comes tonight, we have some of your early Christmas wishes granted, and that is a great Rainbow Six carryover, some good races here at Gulfstream Park, and we're all happy to be here today and hope that you're going to be joining us as well.
And I think for many of us, in fact, I think I could speak for the majority, the number one gift all of us asked Santa Claus was a little more Ron Nicoletti in our lives. And we promise there will be plenty of Ronnie for everybody to go around, enough to go around for everybody a bit later today when we bring him on along with track announcer Pete Aiello. So let's do a little rewind, if you will, on this Sunday edition of Gulfstream Today and backtrack to Saturday's featured 10th race. A nice crowd on hand. It seemed like people were really having a good time. They were betting with both fists, and it was good to have XY Jet back off a 399-day layoff, and he was a pretty determined winner beneath the Misao Jaramillo.
He was determined, and he really had to work for it. The number one horse right there is First Growth, who did not give him a breather in the entire time, and I would say that that is definitely a horse to keep an eye on next time out. He ran a huge race as well, but XY Jet got the win off of the layoff. The connections had been pretty bullish about him heading into the race, and he delivered. Trainer Jorge Navarro afterwards pretty emotional and saying, we'll see how he's doing tomorrow before we make a 2018 plan.
Okay, he's on the verge of his 6-year-old birthday, so congratulations to the connections of XY Jet on a Saturday in which we only ran 4 races over the Gulfstream main track, but it was a very much inside speed-friendly track here at Gulfstream Park. We'll see if that works today, if the track has changed, so to speak. And before we go further, we do need to mention, at least briefly, Mark Henig's 2-year-old firster by Speightstown, named Strike Power, got a 102 buyer winning at 5.5 furlongs.
He did. I did see he was named a rising star as well after that, and we were kind of talking about this before we came on air. With the way that track was playing, it certainly was kind to him with the inside post and braking really sharply and using that speed to his advantage. So we'll see how he develops, but he was a beautifully prepared, obviously a beautiful animal that ran huge on the track. And
feel free to vote in our current poll on Twitter. Who do you think's been the most visually impressive 2-year-old maiden winner recently at Gulfstream? Godoo by Frankel, broke his maiden on the turf yesterday. Strike Power as well. And then you've got 2 other Todd Pletcher trained dirt winners in Navistar and Noble Indy. So check that out on Twitter and give Gulfstream Park and us a follow as well on this Christmas Eve if you haven't done so. So a little rundown of what's on tap today as we fast forward to Sunday, December 24th, and with Pegasus, Merry Christmas to Pegasus, by the way. Well, we've got about 4,000, give or take, in that high 5 to start.
We do. Great way to kick things off in that non-winners of 2 that is very competitive in the first leg. So keep an eye out for that super high 5 wager. That also kicks off the first of 2 pick 5s. And Jason, the story, just under $300,000 in that Rainbow Six pool. That'd be a nice Christmas present.
Oh, you think? Even if you were at the jackpot winner today and you had to share with a couple of other people, that pool, I marveled this morning. In a way, I forgot how high it was ending Saturday's races. Man, 300K, that is as big a carryover as we've had in recent memory since the summertime, in fact, here at Gulfstream Park. So definitely take a shot at that beginning in race number 5. And then the 6th on the downside, the second half of the card, we do begin that late pick 5 for just 50 cents. But it all begins a little after noon, a little earlier than usual, and just 10 races. We have a scheduled last race post of about 4:30, 4:35, give or take. We'll get out of here before 5 o'clock, and you can hopefully have some Christmas Eve dinner with family and friends. But again, the early pick 5, we want some bullets for the rainbow in the late 5, so what are we doing?
That's it. We have to pad the bankroll a bit, and I did need to find a single somewhere, and I wanted to use 4 horses in this first leg because we have some key drop-down horses. We have a couple maybe second off the bench and trying to make amends for their last out race or something like that with some really good barns present in this opening race. So using 4 horses that I thought could potentially have a shot, and I'm just going to say in Victor Barbosa we trust in race number 2. They have a Misao Jaramillo Jaramillo in the saddle on Flying Rocket, who I thought ran a good race last time out at Gulfstream West. Back to Gulfstream, where his success has really been the best, and he does seem to like this track. So I will just single him, trying to keep things affordable, using 2 horses in race number 3. I think Power Jack, the one to beat, but I am interested in a first-time starter in Hurricane Roberta for a good barn in Rohan Crichton. Going to be using 3 horses in race number 4. We have some expensive Pletcher runners in the very highly touted at one point Theory, and then the $1 million purchase, Son of Pioneer of the Nile and Egyptian Hero, and then just 2 deep as we get to that maiden special weight race in the 5th, which also starts the Rainbow Six, $24 for me.
And the wrap-up leg in the 4th is a standalone event for sure, with Theory and the other Todd Pletcher trained runner, Egyptian Hero by Pioneer of the Nile. The 5th one, a good race. The 5th, that is, with Speed Star and Spirit Fly as the big 2 off respectable turf races. One in Miami Gardens, the other up, I think, in Elmont, New York, because that horse did run at Belmont. All right, let's begin, though, with this first race. And for me, it's all about trainer Mark Casse in the opener. And no matter how you feel about Cassie's two runners in Biloxi Bay, the 3, who Acacia has on top, and the horse that I have on top, the number 5, Devise, this is a race that I think, again, starting off with the Casse barn and evaluating both Biloxi Bay and Devise and forming an opinion is what you need if you're going to get involved here in race number 1.
I think you do. You went for one Casse runner, and I went for the other. And yesterday, that probably was a good move, as Mock Tree, I believe it was, had a bit of an upset win, a really impressive victory there. But I did land on Biloxi Bay, just kind of saying, well, now he's making his 2nd start here at Gulfstream after shipping in from Woodbine. I thought it was a good race last time out, considering that he was drawn outside. Gets Tyler Gaffleone in the saddle today and has been working forwardly. Devise has to make amends. I know he was fractious last time, and maybe it's just as simple as he didn't care for Gulfstream Park West.
Yep.
But he has to make some amends from those last 2.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's really, I think, 2 schools of thought with Devise. It's either he's just way off form and he's not going to run well today because he can't possibly win this race if he runs as poorly as he did in October and November over at GPW. Or the flip side of it is he just disliked that turf course, and he would not be the first horse ever to just not really care for that more sandy-based turf course over at Gulfstream West. And that was my thinking in taking the 5 Devise. Well, I'm hoping it's just as simple, again, as getting back here to Gulfstream Park. Now, we also have Maryland Pride, who gets a little bit of a pop for Horatio DePaz from Post 2, as this Maryland bred is in for the 30.
He is, and I know that the only victory that this horse had was showing speed on a turf course at Laurel that was taken off of the turf, and that's how he broke his maiden. But it's a very sharp work on the Palm Meadows turf course. Most recently, 5 furlongs in 1 minute and 1. He's now a gelding as well, and he's dropping in for the tag for the first time. So we'll see how he fares in here shipping in.
All right, Jose Lascano, Gaffleone, Edgar Zayas, Amiseo Jaramillo, Luis Saez, all with many mounts on today's card. Good to have those guys with us here on Christmas Eve, and of course all of you. As we get on to race number 2, our opening race, of course, today on the main track. And the question becomes, and it really is going in to this field of 7, I think it boils down to the 3 Flying Rocket, who we both have on top, and you singled in your early pick 5, and the outside drop down, the number 7 Double Sense, who's been all over the place. Mountaineer, Indiana, Thistledown, Keeneland, Presque Isle. It's pretty incredible that this son of Escondrea has just really built up a scrapbook of different. He's been to more racetracks than I think I have over the last.
Possible.
Yeah, or even over the last 8 months or so. But we both like Flying Rocket. But before we go any further, and you hate to harp on it, but I just, it's hard to really, I think, formulate a strong opinion on the 2nd in any dirt race today, not knowing what main track we have in store.
Well, it's really very interesting, because you're absolutely right. The main track races yesterday seemed to be favoring inside speed, while as on Friday it looked like coming from off the pace is really where you want it to be. So we'll keep an eye on that in the early part of today. But that's one of the other reasons that I liked Flying Rocket, is that I think he can kind of run to his competition. American Czar is a really solid horse. Switch came back to win next time out. And if you look at his races at Gulfstream Park back in August and September. One was the sloppy track win. He came right back to get his non-winners of 2, but he can kind of make that sweeping move, or he can be a little bit closer to the pace if need be.
All right, fair enough. We move on to race number 3, another dirt one, but we cut back to 3/4 of a mile. 2-year-old filly, 12-5 maiden claimers. Very few scratches on the card today. A couple of AEs a bit later on, but you can take out the 8 who had a chance here, and pray, pray, pray. That leaves us with a field of 7 and our opening replay on this Christmas Eve edition of GP Today, and that concerns Power Jack for another top trainer out of Venezuela in Gilberto Zerpa. I know this was a 12-5 maiden claimer, so it's all relative, but going back, and he's the outside horse, by the way, or she is, a daughter of Power Broker in the orange sleeves and orange cap. She really ran well and refused to back down, even though the eventual upset winner on the front end, the number 11 horse, Queen Fantabulous, had the best trip, I think, of the top 2 on the lead, whereas Power Jack was on a hard 3-wide chase throughout and never, ever gave up. I was really impressed going back and doing the work for this card, how gamely and stubbornly she stayed on. And today, this might be the spot where she can just make the lead, right?
It certainly could be. And if she does end up getting the lead in here and just kind of standing and running away from the rest of the field, that probably would be her best motive. I just kind of thought in her 2 12-5 races, they were both very good. They were both seconds. I thought maybe a first-time starter that could be live could have the potential to beat her. Would I leave her out? Absolutely not. But the 5 Hurricane Roberta, and I pulled this stat on trainer Rohan Crichton, who is not one of the bigger name outfits that we normally see here during the championship meet, but does an excellent job.
Oh, yeah.
And 2-year-old first-time starters on the dirt. These numbers actually really shocked me with how good they were. We saw some really nice 2-year-olds debut for him this summer, 29% win and a more than $7 ROI, so you do get some big prices. I don't think this filly will be a huge price, but she's got precocity as well. She's half to grade 3 winner times Mistress, who was 2 for 5 at 2.
Yeah, it looks like she is potentially the live, quote-unquote, story firster in today's 3rd, without seeing the board, of course. And one of the few Florida breds by Brethren I think we've seen not owned by Arundel, which is kind of cool. We'd like to see Brethren, and the talk was over the summer, because a lot of them were ready to run fairly early for Stanley Gold, but I feel as though the real sort of subject with Brethren and his offspring, time and distance, and we are seeing that, right?
We are seeing some improvement from them, from sure, getting a couple of races under their belt, maybe stretching out a little bit more, and I'm trying to figure out, they have each a similar look to them. So I like that she debuts at the 6 furlongs and maybe just given a little bit more time before heading to the racetrack.
Okay, the main event on today's card, race number 4, very rich and competitive, 2 other than $50,000 optional claimer on the main track going 7 furlongs, and very much a case of trainer Todd Pletcher, who picked up win number 15 of the meet here yesterday with the 84 buyer Pulling Gadoo on the turf. One of the few we've seen by Frankel here in South Florida, and that horse looks like he has a big future on the turf for Zayed Stables. But Theory, Egyptian Hero, as you said in your early pick 5, both of these horses cost a pretty penny. And in a way, I feel like Theory, and we'll get to your top pick, Egyptian Hero, in a second. Theory is the starting point. I really feel in every sense of the phrase he has had a star-crossed career the few times that he's run, because he was a highly touted, you can even tell, highly touted 2-year-old running in one of the first ever of the 2016 Saratoga Racecourse meet. He was one of the first 2-year-old maidens to win up there and was a big favorite at a 10-horse field. He would follow that up in mid-October 2016 with the win in Belmont Park's history-rich Futurity, a race we'll bring you right now. And although he was 1 to 5 in this race, he was up on the pace throughout, worked pretty hard. I would say this was a workmanlike victory out of Theory, who struck me in this win. He was the kind of horse who would relish a little more ground than 3/4 as he finally starts to get going, and Javier Castellano stays busy on him, and Theory kind of just chugs, and eventually kicks clear to win this one by 3.5. They tried the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, big price in that race in November 2016. That did not work out, and since then, you've got 2 races during his 3-year-old season, both of them fairly average and forgettable. Question becomes, how does he do today coming back, breaking from the rail? I'm hoping he's a good horse and can overcome it, but there's no denying that rail post is going to make life tough on him.
That is one of my biggest concerns, especially the fact that he's going the 7/8 today and he has the inside post to deal with, and just the fact that he came back off of the layoff after trying the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and they had him sprinting a couple times. The Chick Lang was a very good race. I think Recruiting Ready is a really nice horse. We had 3 rules come back to win, the Grade 3 carry back after that. Just a nice field, but some really tried and true sprinters in there. That was 6 furlongs. We didn't see him again for the next 7 months. There certainly have been quite a few questions. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he came back to win today. It just, I kind of looked at him and said, if he wins, it just can't be with my money type thing. So I did land on the other horse who's got his own fair share of questions, and that's the 5 Egyptian Hero, who did debut at Gulfstream in December of last year. $1 million son, a pioneer of the Nile, very high profile connections. He came back in the early part of 2017 and won 2 races at Tampa. He has things to prove, as well as he is certainly much lighter race. But that's kind of what I like about him, and that he hasn't maybe failed at such a high level as potentially a stablemate.
And a far better, I should say, it's a fine and a far better post than his uncoupled stablemate Theory, who's going to have life tough. I mean, if he wins, he's going to have to be pretty good in this race facing, and it gets a little interesting as well, because both these Pletcher horses have speed, and you would imagine Egyptian Hero is going to be right up on the engine going 7. Crocodile Charlie, another one that can get involved early. But this is a pretty deep field that goes beyond the big two layoff runners from the Pletcher barn. I gave a look to the 7, Sunshine and Shadow, seemed to be getting his act together through late summer into early fall, and maybe was a little out of his element last time out in a very deep million sprint preview. And you are looking for the number 4 Grand Candy for the always dangerous Mike Baker.
He needs a closer, and that's what we'll see again how the main track is playing today. But I didn't use Sunshine and Shadow, and I probably should have, because he's good at the 7/8 and has an outside post. But I just thought Grand Candy could be one that could be coming from off the pace if there is any sort of duel.
All right, sounds good. That'll go as a very high-profile 4th race on this Christmas Eve card, but a lot more action to come, including the Rainbow 6 after this break.
At ExpressBet, we celebrate the champions that make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to give players more of the rewards they deserve, give bettors the information they need to win, and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. ExpressBet, we are racing.
Happy holidays and Merry Christmas from all of us here at Gulfstream Park and the Stronach Group. To everybody out there, got the best fans in the world, and it's good to have you with us again as Acacia and Jason catch up with you live from our Gulfstream Park studios on this Sunday, Christmas Eve edition of Gulfstream Today.
Yes, indeed, and as Jason said, we're happy to have you joining us here. We have 10 races on today's card. We will be dark for live racing tomorrow on Christmas Day, and then we'll be right back here on Tuesday the 26th. We have the opening day of our sister track, Santa Anita Park, and we'll be here with 11 races.
And we have a Rainbow 6. Not 11 races today, only 10, but how does 300,000 or thereabouts sound in the Rainbow 6 carryover? So what are we doing?
It's a nice way to start things off, and this would be a pretty good Christmas present. And as Jason mentioned earlier, even if you don't have the one unique ticket, 6 out of 6 yesterday paid more than $56,000. Wow. So that's a pretty good payoff, and some nice stocking stuffer shopping, if you will. Now I'm going to use 2 horses to start things off in that maiden special weight with Spirit Fly and Speed Star. But it's a pretty tricky race and should be a really good kind of telltale race for a couple of horses in there too. 2 deep in the 6th race, and going to be using 2 in the 7th as well. That's another nice maiden special weight. That one, the fillies take center stage. I'm spreading in the 8th race, a nice allowance race on the turf, and we've got a couple of interesting shippers in there. A good one for Shug McGahee and Church Social, and Salmody, another Todd Fletcher runner off of the layoff. Going to be using 3 horses in the 9th race, another good turf race, and hopefully we get to the 10th. Have a little bit of prices that I potentially like in there. So I'm using Gator Girl and Momenta Cap, both of them dropping in class.
Sounds good. Very good sequence on tap. Anxious to see what Church Social can do in that race for Shug. That's the third to last race on the card. If she does actually win and can go the mile and a 16, because she's been more of a longer distance type horse, mile and a quarter, mile and a furlong, mile and 3/16, she's probably going to win if she shows up and can go the mile and a 16. But that's a big if with a horse who's 1 for 12 with a number of narrow losses, right?
Been good picking up checks and got to get out of that second gear.
Definitely. Now the 5th race here, 2-year-old fillies bringing on the opening leg of Sunday's Rainbow Six at 5 furlongs on the turf. And back to Gulfstream Park West we go with a very key replay of the number 4 Speed Star. I know she's not coming out of, say, high-profile races like the 2 Spirit Fly in New York. I really liked her turf debut and liked her second start, too. A tough head loss on the main track. But she, as the number 4, really ran great in this race, attacking that horse on the outside, puts her away, or I should say on the inside, puts her away. And even though that horse, the eventual winner, Picara, on the outside, had all that momentum and looked like she was just going to roll by and win going away, I really, really love that Speed Star. Hung on there so tough towards the inside. And I like her today, making her 4th ever start for trainer Safi Joseph Jr., picking up the leading rider in Luis Saez.
And I did think it was a good race for her last time in her first start on the turf. She had only ever faced state-bred competition prior to that as well. So I thought that she really did prove herself a bit. She was the tepid favorite, and in general, we had seen a lot of speed favoring turf course action. That race in particular, I thought, did set up for closers. Picara came back and ran okay in her subsequent start. So Speed Star, I think, needs to run even a little bit better than that to face this field, but it was an excellent race for sure. I just landed on the number 2 Spirit Fly for Wesley Ward, taking the blinkers off in here. Couple of races already on the turf, and she does kind of have that closing kick. I hope she's a little bit closer like she was in her debut race at Saratoga.
All right, the shades are off from post number 2. As you mentioned, she'll drop out of a race in which 6 have returned. None won their immediate next start. I thought she ran okay last time. After trailing inside, she was quite simply 3rd best as the top 2, including a good-looking Divine Entry pulled away from the field on the 1st of October at Belmont Park. Do have a couple of firsters in the race, in fact 3, and they all have outside post. Here's to life for John Service, who went for $190,000 after bringing $80,000 as a yearling. So she was pinhooked as a 2-year-old and went for more than she sold for as a yearling. I would take that as a good sign. Very pricey, New York bred, and thread the needle for one of my favorite stallions of all time, and Tail the Cat, and Ragtime Susie for trainer Tom Bush. And you don't see Tom get to run too many firsters that cost $100,000 or more, and he's a very, very good horseman.
Yes, he's an excellent horseman. 2-year-old first-time starters on the turf. He is just 1 for 20 in the past 5 years, but this one is beautifully bred by Union Rags out of a graded stakes place mare who was a 13-time turf winner.
All right, big fan of Tom Bush. Hope he has a runner today with Edgar Zayas from the outside. Race number 6. Speaking of the outside, we're halfway home on this Christmas Eve edition of Gulfstream today. Race number 6 kicks off the late pick 5, and I sat down and compiled my list of Santa Claus. A lot of things to be thankful and blessed. I am very lucky guy, but I did say, hey Santa, if you can make it happen, give me a real fast pace in race number 6. I need to get a nice setup for the 6 Elite Air and the number 10 Ballyhoo Moon. So there was my, aside from wanting more Ron Nicoletti, a fast pace in today's 6th race. You have a really good effort last time out from One Breath at a Time, Acacia in the 7th. A good-looking, deep-looking 2-year-old filly maiden special weight. However, my buddy Jeremiah Engelhart and Shug have firsters that look like they're going to be pretty live today.
They do look well, Mint, and I believed I used all three of those horses as well. One Breath at a Time does have to step into open company after only ever facing Florida Breds.
It's all about, I could see a lot of people singling Church Social and just viewing her as the most talented, most consistent runner in the 8th. It's all about her going this mile to 16th distance, and if she can deliver that knockout punch, I opted to use obviously 3 in race number 8. I am singling, and some may scoff and say it's a crazy single because it's a 12-horse field, the 9th, and a super competitive 2-year-old filly allowance race on the turf. But as the comment says, I've got VIP membership in the Mike Maker fan club, and I really liked, what's her name?
Go Noni Go.
Yeah, Go Noni Go. I liked her last race with a good trip up at the Big A. She is the single and only 2 deep. It's all about the bankroll, that blasted bankroll. I wish, you know, you could spend and put in multiple tickets for $150, but we got to keep it affordable here, and I admit I'm a little light just using the 6 and 8 in race number 10. Who'd you use in the 10th race today in your Rainbow Six?
The 10th race, as we get down there, I ended up using the 4 Gator Girl on the drop. I have the 8 Momenta Cat, who you have on there as well.
All right, so if we're live, you're live, I'm live, maybe we'll hedge a little bit and come up with a nice little arrangement using each filly that we did not use in our multi-race bets to cap the card. Absolutely. That's the best plan of attack. You can put together a nice little ticket, and it's always fun sharing the great moments in life, including wins, with friends. Absolutely. Learn that from Mike Rapoli. But anyway, moving on to race number 6. It's all about the pace in this race, and I feel as though maybe you have the best speed horse on top, who I've got 3rd, and I respect her, the number 5, Secret Recipe.
Well, I actually used her 2nd because I had the same view that you did, that it was going to be speed, and it's interesting we ended up on the same horse on top. But just for some food for thought, the 5 Secret Recipe will show a stat on trainer Reed Nagel in the past 5 years with winners last time out in turf sprints. He does an excellent job. This is another kind of not as high-profile barn that I am a big fan of. 42% win and an ROI of more than $4. So I do think that she is the best speed horse, and the way that she won last time out won me over. That being said, she's going to have some other speed to deal with in here. You're absolutely right. You know Fallen Leaf is going to go.
Oh, yeah.
You know This Song Is About You is probably going to go, but I do think Secret Recipe could hold on for a piece.
I definitely think she's going to run well and can be right there, no doubt, and I think she's a must-use. But again, it looks like that first flight of 3 or 4 fillies, they may take a little something out of one another, and maybe they'll be ripe for somebody to pick them off and cut them down. And I have no qualms with the 2 efforts for current trainer Joe Orsino that the 6 Elite Air has put forth, including a second last time behind a big 3-5 favorite.
Meant to Be Mine was taking that big drop in class, and I thought that that Joe Orsino has done a really good job with this filly. You're absolutely right. The 2 last races have been solid. My other thinking was that the 3 Stormbeam coming in from Woodbine with some really nice local works could be one maybe to be closing a bit as well. Nick Juarez in the saddle.
And probably remiss had Saturday happened maybe a couple of days earlier with Marcus Vitale walking away with 2 wins. I'd give the 8 Gracie Spirit another look as well, as that horse gets a trainer change to Marcus Vitale, and Vitale with 3 wins this week alone at Gulfstream Park. As we get on to race number 7, a good one on tap here. There's some very good races. I know it's a stakeless Sunday, but we have a whole army of 2-year-olds in that Theory Egyptian Hero race with the Pletcher barn back in the 4th. So we've got 2-year-old fillies in this $48,000 maiden special weight, and we'll get to the most likely very live firsters in a second. But if either firster, and there's more than 2, but if any of these firsters can't really run at all or need a race or 2, then the 6, One Breath at a Time, will likely find herself in a great spot. And she ran really, really well last time out, losing a tough one in her second start for trainer Stanley Gold.
That was definitely a tough beat. She lost by a neck and by a nose, excuse me. I think that she really found herself in that second start. We'll show a stat on Stanley Gold in the past 5 years. 2-year-olds in the money last time out in maiden special weight. It is an ROI slightly below $2, but the numbers are very good. As I mentioned earlier, her biggest hurdle here is that she's going to be facing open company for the first time, having only run against Florida breds. That being said, she looks like a Brethren filly that's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, she's pretty good. And again, she's got some heart and she's got some guts, and we'll see how she does 3rd time out. However, you have a feeling looking at this again that Jeremiah's firster for August on Farm. The number 3 Majestic won. And although this really isn't Shug's game per se, winning with 2-year-old firsters on the dirt, with the number 4 horse Romantic Moment, they both have a look that they are probably firsters that have a little bit of a story behind both of them. Now, in the case of Majestic 1, there's a lot to like as we give you the tail of the tape here with this daughter of Majestic Warrior, who sold as a yearling for $47,000. And I thought it was interesting that she did not bring her reserve as a 2-year-old in training at Fasig-Tipton this past May at $150,000. Now, all 4 sibs out of the dam are multiple winners, and you've got a couple of 2-year-old winners in the family. And I do like, I know it was only one work and one horse doesn't necessarily equally another, but the fact that that November 28th breeze was 46 breezing from the gate up at Palm Meadows, right there, what you can assume, I think correctly, she breezed in company with her 2-year-old colt stablemate Projector, who ran as giant debut as you could possibly run without winning.
And that's a great piece of information there. She's beautifully bred, as you mentioned. The dam was precocious as well. She also won it too. And one of those foals you mentioned was a stakes winner in Zip Cashback. So it looks like she's very well meant for the debut.
Now we're going to take her on top, assuming she's live. I put the Shug firster with Gaffleon second in Romantic Moment, and I'll be anxious to hear what you have to say about these fillies because, again, not Shug's game having them ready to roll. In fact, he's only had 3 2-year-olds over the last 5 years win first out on the dirt, and in that span the 3 winners were Browse, who started her career like she was going to be a superstar, Honor Code, and Top Billing. So all 3 at the time were exceptional talents.
Pretty interesting. We will actually see Browse running here on Tuesday, so it'll be fun to see how she does as well. But I think Romantic Moment, again, lots of nice breeding there. The dam was very successful, though she was mostly turf, but a really nice group of fillies here.
Let's move on to race number 8. We're back on the turf, and we stay with the gals. The 3-up fillies and mares in this non-winners of one $50,000 allowance race. And again, Shug's got back-to-back major contenders on the program today in the form of the number 8 Church Social. The hang-up with her, the 0 for 7 on the year, despite the fact she's right there every time.
She really has been. Her last 6 races have been in the money performances, and you're right, she has been running a bit longer, and that is one of the biggest things that concerns me in here. She does have a win. In fact, that was her only win in her maiden special weight, was going the mile in a 16th distance. So I'll be curious to see what she looks like physically and how she is coming in here to Gulfstream Park if she can do the mile in a 16th distance. She's obviously a horse with a lot of talent, obviously one that they always had high hopes for with that $350,000 purchase price. I did end up taking her on top, but if you remember, this is a race that I did use a lot of coverage in. I got off the Pat M's Image bandwagon because I've just been burned by her finishing in the money in the last couple, but this is as solid and overachieving mare as you'll ever find.
That's the whole thing that I like about her. I mean, that's the real appeal of Pat M's Image. She's going to be a price, and although she lands in a race where you have Shug's horse in from the Big Apple and Todd Pletcher's got Samodi coming back and she's going to get bet with Gaffleon, this Pat M's Image is very honest as the day is long. And don't be fooled. Those company lines and fields, those are legitimately strong fields that she's been running against and with on the turf. And to be honest, I feel like in the talent department, those narrow losses stack up quite favorably at a much bigger price than a horse like Luis Saez's with Church Social.
And that's certainly fair. I threw in the number 6 Nollins Kitty, shipping in for Kelly Rubley, who's actually had some solid races against tough company as well. So this is a really interesting race. I mentioned this earlier with a lot of shippers and kind of unknowns in here, so we'll see how they stack up.
Yeah, rare to see you go 4 deep in a race, especially like a high-level allowance race like this. But again, if Church Social and you think she's a little bit vulnerable as the favorite, you can go a lot of ways in the 8th race. We'll see what happens. Now, the 9th today, a standalone event on its own. But again, we continue the momentum here as we get on to, in fact, an all-turf final pick 3. There's a field of 12 ready and waiting with this 2-year-old filly high-priced, other than allowance optional claimer. This will be the West Point Thoroughbreds race of the day. And why don't we get to the Keeneland last out maiden winner from mid-October, and Lena Marie, who showed some gameness, had a good trip, and basically was poised out there in the red and white sleeves and the white cap, and Julian Leperoux, very expensive painter yearling filly, and was very determined getting the win in a 12-horse field at 8-5. For me, though, as she ships into South Florida, she's got to improve, and she's got to hold that Kentucky form for Eddie Keneally, who's a very good trainer, but it seems like the majority of Eddie's wins come at Churchill Downs and Keeneland. I think his horses, for whatever reason, just seem to maybe have a little more of an impact in Kentucky. That was the one kind of issue I had with her on top.
I agree with you. It looks like some of the stronger firepower, or maybe just kind of primed for some of those Kentucky races. I do think that it was a good win from her. That race actually produced 3 next out winners, so proved to be a productive race, but I think that I had the same kind of concerns. Go Noni Go is actually my best bet on the day, so I guess that I have a VIP membership to the Maker fan club as well. I loved her last race too. I thought she faced very tough company running behind Ultima D in best performance at Kentucky Downs in stakes competition prior to that. I think that she's faced some good fillies.
She has. The horse that cut her down and closed, I mean, basically from Home Depot last time on the Aqueduct Turf Course, Ozap is a pricey Ghost Zapper filly trained by Christophe Command, who's 2 for 2, and I would bet my bottom dollar that she's up at Payson Park as we speak and probably getting herself ready for a 3-year-old filly turf stake at Gulfstream Park. Go Noni Go ran very well in that race, and as she lands in a very competitive and deep 9th race, I'm also wondering what we get out of a couple. There's 4 altogether, but mainly a pair of fillies in Gift of Glory and My Masterpiece, who ran really well and overachieved at huge odds a couple of weeks ago in that Claiming Crown, or the Claiming Crown undercard, in the Wait a While on a turf that, boy, it had a lot of give to it. I mean, it rained pretty hard.
It did, and I think Gift of Glory has really kind of stamped herself in the way that she ran, both in the Wait a While and the juvenile turf at Gulfstream Park West. She looked to me to be the main kind of local contender. We both had some interest in Annabella Queen as well, who was second in the juvenile turf at Gulfstream Park West, and I think is a solid turf runner as well.
All right, as we wrap it up here, Christmas Eve comes to a close before we head home and wait for the big man in red and white as we cap the card with race number 10, 2-year-old fillies in this $25,000 maiden claimer at a 2-turn mile. So there's a little bit of an agreement with our top 4. Got a couple of horses in the mix, but for me on top, logical contender, Cassie, Jaramillo, the 6, Lovely Sunset. I think she's going to pull a good trip with that tactical speed and perhaps tracking the number 4 Gator Girl, who you've got on tap.
I did. I went with the speed play in here, and I probably should have used Lovely Sunset somewhere in here. I just kind of preferred others in this race, and I thought Gator Girl dropping in class, you could get a little bit of a price on her. She's got the turf pedigree to work with, and she's got that early speed. If she runs like she did at Delaware 2 starts back, I think that'll be key. All
right, sounds good. 2-year-old fillies in the nightcap today as we close out a Christmas Eve program here at Gulfstream Park at a near $300,000 Rainbow Six carryover. Big, big stuff.
Yes, it should be a fun day. Thanks for joining us at Gulfstream Park, and Merry Christmas to all those who celebrate.
Pennsylvania, proud of our growing breeding and racing industry.